Alright, what is up everybody? Welcome back to another video in our multiplayer series that we're currently making, where we are trying to make a full prototype game of a co-op RPG action thingy. Let's just get into it. We are currently refactoring everything into components, or most stuff into components, so that's what we will be continuing with right now. So let's start with the NPC basically. Because we set up the player, we're back pretty much to where we left off before the component stuff. But oh, what up? Rotation rate? What? Alright. Slight hiccup. This timeline that we set up in the player, this rotation timeline, it needs to be 1 second long. Otherwise, that's what happened. We kept setting the actual locations, so that's not gonna work. There we go. Alright, let's start setting up the NPC. So we have a master MC here. Let's set the mesh to Annie, -90, and rotation to 70. Blueprint for now. Fairly sure I did some materials. Okay, cool. Let's make the enemy red. So set the materials. So enemy is now red again. So let's start with the combat stuff, right? We need to be able to hit our enemy. Actually, to do that first, we need to enable the weapon tracing stuff that we had, so let's do that instead. So we're gonna go to our components and this component, blueprint class actor AC weapon trace weapon trace manager. That's just a blueprint, so delete that and make a actual component, actor component, AC weapon trace manager. Maybe it should be weapon manager. Oh, weapon trace manager. This component will be a simple one. It will pretty much just take the trace. So let's go into old character and look how we trace. Okay, so in our old master character we had this client toggle damage trace. And just to clarify, we're changing stuff to be more component oriented, which means we can get away a bit from the master and child structure, since we'll just use components on each actor instead. So the NPC and the player no longer actually need to be parts of the same blueprint chain. So they don't need to inherit from the master character anymore. It's not even gonna be a master character in that sense. So this is our old functions, right? PI combat, toggle damage trace. So we're gonna copy this. Paste it into our trace manager. And we are gonna go into this toggle damage trace function. We're gonna find this. We're gonna copy the toggle damage trace function. And we're gonna copy this. We're gonna make another event for this actually. We're gonna make another event for this one. So, what do we actually need here? This we don't need anymore because we can just call this on the component. What we do need is we need some inputs here for the weapon, basically. So, because this is using the sockets, right? Yes, this is using this socket here. So, in this function, we need an input for a static mesh. And this is gonna be called weapon mesh. So that's gonna be the traced mesh. So promote a variable, call it weapon mesh. Let's do this here. So and here we're gonna get the weapon mesh. We're gonna replace all of the main hand mesh thingies. Ah, wait, was this not a component? Oh, static mesh component. Object reference. It's to be this static mesh component. Go. Create variable. Create variable. I'm gonna grab the weapon mesh. Gonna already damaged actors. We're gonna promote to a variable. And in this case, we're gonna do this with the tick instead. Because I mean, running a very fast timer at something like this, or even faster maybe, it's gonna be minimal difference towards actually using the tick. The tick fires every frame, but this is gonna be almost every frame anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So instead we're gonna do our damage trace on tick, but when we do this toggle damage trace, we will set component tick enabled. So this means that tick is on when we are tracing, and from the false, when we turn the trace off, we will disable the tick, which means that this component will not tick unless we actually use it for tracing. So that you don't tick this all the time. And I mean, even if you have a branch here that does like damage trace on, it's still gonna tick the branch every frame, which is unnecessary. So we might as well turn it off. That's even better. So now it's pretty much like a timer, because the timer is the same thing. We could turn it off and turn it on, and now we can just do that with tick instead. And here, we need to replace our weapon mesh, weapon mesh, weapon mesh, weapon mesh. Let's just unplug this. And we're gonna do for duration, just so we can debug it. And in our animations, we have this state damage trace. So we're gonna open this, gonna change this now again. So on the begin, gonna get component by class. We're gonna use the weapon trace manager. Toggle damage trace. Nope, not toggle damage trace. This one. Let's rename this to just damage trace. And client toggle damage trace. That's the one we want to use. And if you have custom logic, you plug in the weapon you want to trace from here. We're just gonna do get character. Gonna do another one of these. And let me pause for 1 second. There we go. I'm back. And from here, we want to get main and mesh. And there might be an argument to be made here for the fact that this might be a bit messy to always get like different components. So we could, this client toggle damage trace, there's an argument to be made that maybe this should all be in the character manager. So we just use that all the time. But we want this trace to work for AI characters as well. But it's gonna be on. Begin. And it's gonna be off when we end it. Go. So now let's just see if that's working. Let me see what I can put. Yeah, I fucked it up. So I'm just gonna delete that master character. And I'm gonna use my backup project for. I'm just gonna use my backup project for finding out what we did. So let's now see access none, get component by class. That is because we haven't added the trace manager. And you can see that tracing works again. And we can hit stuff. So that is fine. And these are not replicated variables. I want to save a bit on performance here and only execute this trace on the client. But since this animation here is replicated, this function fires on all the clients and the server, and the clients don't know about this stuff, the other clients, so it's going to return that error. So can we get from here? Cannot. No. So let's see if we can. How would I do this? Because we only want to fire this on the local player. We could do that, but that's gonna let me pause. Let's try this. I think I'm not sure this will work. But theoretically, autonomous proxy should be the character that is controlled by the client, the current client. But this might return true for those as well, because we're running it on this client. Yeah. So we probably need to make a locally controlled check. So this is why networking becomes a bit messy. You see this get player controller is local controller. Since this now fires on all the clients will get their own player controller, which always will be a local player controller. So this will not work in this case. So we need to get it from here, is locally controlled. Because the character, we will always get the character that is the owner of this specific component, right? And that's only gonna be locally controlled for the actual locally controlled. Maybe that worked, it's just I didn't plug it in. I don't know. Let's do it like this anyway. Let's just see if this works. That shouldn't return any trace on the other screen you can see up in the corner. Do wonder why this keeps happening then. Let me pause. All right. Silly me, as usual. I forgot to remove the stuff from the tick, and since tick is on by default, it was always triggering that. It was always triggering that. the trace function. So, but let's not do tick. I remove the tick. Let's just instead do as we did before. So instead of enabling disabling tick, set timer by function name and input the trace function in the timer. And we do a trace timer handle. So you promote the handle of the timer to a variable. And instead of disabling the tick, we clear an invalidated timer here. So you can remove the component ticks. Do like this. And also, let's just not replicate this at all. So that's just toggle damage trace. We get owner, we cast to character, check if it's locally controlled. So we run this function on the client only, so we don't unnecessarily stress the server, because we're going for a co-op game, business server-ish. So now it should work. You can see it's only firing on the client here. And if I play as the server, it's only firing on the server. If you do want to run everything on the server, you would do the other way around. In that case, we could make this a server event, not make a locally controlled. So now this is a server event. It's not a locally controlled check. And we do a switch has authority instead. And now it should only run on the server, I believe. Let's see. Now it's the other way around. Even though I'm playing as the client, the server is now doing the trace for the client. So the reason I'm not doing this, just to explain, is that if we are doing a 4-person co-op game, it would still probably be fine. I'm just avoiding it. But if we're doing a 4-player co-op game and you have one normal player as the listen server, he's gonna run this trace for every player character. I mean, he's probably gonna do that for every NPC anyway when they trace, so it's not that big of a deal. But still, might as well avoid it where we can. Ignore that. And since this doesn't need to be an RPC anymore, I'm actually gonna collapse all of this to a function. Toggle damage trace new. Delete this. File. Just gonna call it toggle damage trace on weapon mesh. Because we already have a variable. And let's clean this up a little bit. Weapon static mesh. Don't need the lines there everywhere. Oh, that's plugged in there, that's plugged in there. So it's straight. That looks good. And from this, pop. Instead gonna do toggle damage trace. I'm sorry, these tutorials will take a while because we're trying to do things fairly properly instead of rushing it. So we have a good foundation code base to stand on for the future. Since we're planning on doing a lot of videos instead of just doing the normal YouTube quick tutorials thing. Okay, there we go. That's gonna be it for this one, and I will see you in the next one. Also let me know in the comments if you have any questions, like and subscribe if you're new and watched this far, and if you like it, and don't forget to check the patrons if you're interested, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!